Well, hello once again. Today we're going to be looking at Mark chapter 6. And Mark continues to unfold for us the story of Jesus, a story really of rejection amongst his own people, and how Jesus teaches his disciples to follow in his footsteps and to accept the fact that some people will believe and some people won't. And so there's a lot here to ponder, things perhaps that we had not thought about. So we'll begin by beginning. The first section here, Jesus is again teaching in the synagogue, and people were just astonished by his authority, by what he had to say. And they're saying, where did this man get these things? Do you know what I mean? Like, who is this guy? And, people, don't people tend to look at the external? Don't they tend to try to figure things out with their human minds, and not see the spiritual? Paul tells us to not know anyone after the flesh. And that is a central teaching of Jesus, and something that Mark continues to bring out, especially if he's writing with Peter there, kind of letting him know what's important, what to write. Peter's defining moment came when he proclaimed, when Jesus asked him, who do you say that I am, Peter? And Peter said, you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus said to him, flesh and blood hasn't told you that, but my Father in heaven. And so you again see this principle happening, and it continues to happen to every man in this day. The only way that we can know the Lord is to know him by a revelation of the Spirit. And so as we share the good news, we need to be praying that the Holy Spirit goes before us and prepares the hearts of those who are meant to come to the Lord. So again, they begin to look at his family and say, is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon, and are not his sisters here with us? And they were offended in him. So again, they're looking at the family of Jesus, and by this time it's a large family. Many years would have gone by to have actually this many children, and so they probably think of the family in Nazareth as just another family, and that all its members are equal. But all the members are not equal in this family, and they're offended. Just as I think of the story of King David, when Saul comes to anoint the king, and he looks through all the members of David's family, and he says, they push out the best ones. And he's like, no, it's not him. It's not him. Do you have anybody else? Oh, yeah, there's David. He's like out in the back 40, but, he's, the little one, it's not him. And Saul says it is him. So Jesus says to them as a rebuttal, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country, among his own relatives, and in his own house. And what, we have to really ask ourselves, why is that? And there's like a familiarity that sort of breeds contempt. We think we know where someone's coming from, and yet we don't. And people are not seeing where Jesus is coming from here. So we need to be careful that God hides his glory. God hides his, he hides it in these vessels of clay. And Jesus had become a vessel of clay, a glorious vessel of clay, but he was not being recognized in his own town. And you wonder what Nazareth was like back then. When people are saying nothing good could come out of Nazareth. The people that sounds like the people were pretty rough around the edges and not easily accepting. Perhaps they had their fill of religion, false religion, and they're like, oh no, here we go again. Do you know what I mean? if the Messiah is coming, he's probably coming down from heaven in a big, blaze of glory. He's not showing up in the Mary Joseph family that lives around the corner. So we need to really look at our hearts and see how that might apply to us, where our hearts can become hardened. Because it says in verse 5, now he could do no mighty work there except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them, and he marveled because of their unbelief. Then he went about the village in a circuit teaching. So, he himself marveled at the unbelief, and he probably felt, think about him in his humanity, he probably felt sad, rejected. It says he marveled. It's like I can't even believe that people are not seeing things through the eyes of the Spirit. They haven't been taught to do that. They haven't learned to do that. They're not in the place that God would have them to be. So the next story continues, and he gives his disciples power to cast out demons. And then he tells them to really take no provisions on their journey, to go into a place and stay there. If someone welcomes them, stay there during the entirety of their stay. And it says, whoever will not receive you nor hear you, when you depart from there, shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. Assuredly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in that day of judgment than for that city. And again, Jesus teaches counterintuitively against what we are probably mostly taught today. We're taught to bear with people, to keep at it. And there's a certain wisdom in not giving up on people and letting the Lord work on people. But there's a definitiveness here in Jesus where he draws the line. He presents the message, he presents himself, he presents the message, and then if it's not accepted, he shakes the dust off. He doesn't try to bend over backwards and go against a person's decision or their will to accept him. And he's teaching that to his disciples. Go to the people that accept you and shake the dust off the feet of the people that won't. And let that shaking of the dust be a testimony against them, and their lot will be worse than, the lot of Sodom and Gomorrah, which was a pretty bad place, So the next story continues with the political situation that's arose. We have King Herod hearing of Jesus. Now, obviously, King Herod must have heard of Jesus because, again, remember we have the Pharisees linking up with the Herodians to kill Jesus. So somehow all this gets back to Herod. Herod's got a guilty conscience. He's killed John the Baptist. He's in a very silly, stupid move. He gets trapped into having to cut the head off of John the Baptist. And he probably has just enough conscience to know that was not a good thing. So he starts to wonder within himself. Here we recount the story of Herodias getting John the Baptist to cut, getting Herod to get the head of John the Baptist presented to her. And so again, we see the political intrigue that's at work here, how politics can work against godly people and defeat them. We live in a world that's still in the hands of the evil one, and evil people are still around. And so we have no promise that that God will always protect our lives. But we're always safe with God. God will keep us. He will keep us spiritually. He will always be with us. But we don't have the promise that we'll never lose our lives for the sake of the gospel. And actually, in the scriptures, being a martyr is a very high calling and has special rewards. So Jesus lays that out for us, and he doesn't mince words with us. So we really need to ask ourselves some things here. What do we, what assumptions might we have about following God and what he will do for us that Jesus actually maybe hasn't promised to us? He's promised us so many things, and he's such a good God, and he takes such good care of us. And yet we can assume things about Jesus and read things into what he says that he really maybe hasn't promised. And that can hurt us. The devil can use that against us. And in these days, we better shore up all of those kinds of holes in our thinking about who God is, because things will happen that will cause us to question not only our relationship with God, but who God is. And we really need to be people of the scriptures. We need to be Bereans who really understand the call of Jesus and all that entails. So it goes here in Mark into the Jesus in his wisdom calls his disciples away to rest. He's always advocating, teaching that you must come away from ministry and rest and just be apart to renew your time with God and to renew all that's been taken out of your soul. So they try to go away, but the crowds follow them, and it comes to the end of the day, and Jesus has compassion for the people that have followed him. It's not like they could go to the local supermarket and get dinner and pop back out there. They have nothing to eat, and it's the last thing from the disciples' mind that they're going to be asked to provide the food. But Jesus goes ahead and he says, you provide food for them. And they're like, really? Where are we going to get that kind of money? It's going to cost 200 denarii, which would be 200 days' wages, almost, more than half a year's wages just to provide dinner for people. And so he goes and he asks them, what do they have? What do they have? And they have, well, not very much. We have 5 loaves and 2 fishes. And so he takes them and he blesses them and he distributes them. And everyone eats. And it says now those who had eaten the loaves were about 5,000 men. So you figure 5,000 men with their wives, 10,000, and say just only 2 kids each. What would be more than that? That's a lot of people that Jesus fed. So we see his, amidst his own rejection and struggles, his compassion never wavers. His pastoral heart to take care of never wavers. We'll go on to Jesus walking on the sea here. And again, he's he sent them, he sent the disciples away, and he departed to the mountain to pray. But then they see him. It says he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them, and about the 4th watch of the night he came to them walking on the sea and would have passed them by. So again, you see almost a playful Jesus here. Jesus trying to expand people, trying to break the boxes they have of the limitations of who Jesus is and what he's capable of. Just as Jesus will break our boxes, that he will playfully interact with us so that we can start to unwind some of our limited thinking. And man, that we need some of our limited thinking unwound. We need a lot of our thinking unwound So one of the questions we can ask ourselves from Mark's gospel is, Lord, what do you need to unwind? What do you need to expand in me that I might understand who you really are? I give you permission, Lord Jesus, to come into my life and to, to show me yourself in a way that I have not seen you. And we can trust him to do that, and it will be surely a surprising time, and show us our unbelief, show us what we don't know. And Jesus does this. He does this to cause us to grow, to cause us to know who God is. So the end of this chapter in Mark is a scene where he's again overcome by crowds of people. He's out there preaching. It says he entered into villages, cities, into the country, into the marketplaces, and people begged that they might just touch the border of his garment. It's because they must have heard the story of the lady who touched the garment. They knew that they didn't even need to go through this procedure. They just needed to touch Jesus. And isn't that, the beautiful ending? Isn't that all we need to do, is to touch Jesus and to believe him in ways that we, in new ways, so that we can become increasingly healed from the things that plague us, whether they be mental or physical or emotional. The Lord has compassion upon us. So let's be taking time apart, asking him what he wants to impart to us, and letting him be God to us in a way that we have not yet seen or understood. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.